welcome to the third Gamertech stream. My name is Tal, and with me today I have my lovely assistant, Frank.
Hello.
Frank is my friend. He'll be joining us today, and today we will be building the Gamertech server, or more specifically the Gamertech NAS. NAS, by the way, Frank, is Network Attached Storage. Frank doesn't know anything about servers or NAS really, so he's here to come along for the journey, and hopefully he will learn something, and you out there will learn something too. Thank you very much for joining. I'm Tal, this is Frank, and today we are building the Gamertech NAS. So, what is a NAS? It is a network attached storage. So to put it in really simple terms, it is some storage that attaches to your network, your home network or LAN, rather than one specific PC. Why does Gamertech need a NAS? So any person or persons or business that has files that need to be stored and need to be accessed, readily accessed. A NAS, there's a good use case for a NAS. So our use case is we stream on YouTube. So we create, and we stream at quite high quality video. So we stream at 4K, 60 frames per second. So a typical 3-hour video, I think, is something like 20 or 30 gigabytes. So it's
pretty big files going on.
It's quite a lot. So as time goes on, we will have more and more videos that we want to be able to keep, so that we can go back and then use them later, get some footage from older videos, do some extra editing, grab some footage and do some B-roll, all sorts of things, and it will allow me to access those files, but from any computer within the local area network. So you know what a local area network is, right? I'll explain for anyone that might not know it. A local area network is essentially just your network at home. So you might have, your local network might consist of just your wireless router. So let's say nothing is plugged in. You don't have anything in your Ethernet cable, any Ethernet ports plugged in, but you've got your wireless router, and every device that then connects to your network is given an IP address. So think of it like an address for your PC, right?
Okay.
So PC number 1 might get 192.168.1.1, and then your phone might get 192.168.1.2, and so on for however many devices you have. So your router or switch, or however you've got your network set up, then is able to move all of the traffic around without there being any conflicts. The idea behind the NAS sitting on the network and being attached to the whole network is that then any of your other devices that connect to that network, whether it be by Wi-Fi or by cable, through an Ethernet cable, will be able to see and then access the NAS, the server.
There we go. So you can just store everything in one place.
You can
access it from everywhere.
You can store everything in one place and access it from everywhere. So there are so many use cases for a NAS. I'm sure you can think of some use cases. What do you think? What would you use a NAS for?
I'd use it for gaming LANs. If everybody needs install files or patches or things like that, and we can just put them all in one place. Or media sharing, maybe a media server, something like that.
Yep. So the home LAN and playing games with all your friends is a fantastic use case. You can set up a Steam cache. You can download and store all of your games on your network attached storage, and then whenever your friends come along for the weekend, which we do occasionally, well, once a year maybe.
Yeah. Hey, this would be good at my place because my connection's not very good. So rather than everybody downloading it, they can all just get it off the NAS, right?
Absolutely. So you come to your house. We attach ourselves to the network by, again, cable or Wi-Fi. And we'll just be able to then go to Steam and browse your Steam library to the NAS rather than to the local files, and then all the files will be there ready to go. And a LAN connection, assuming you've got good switch and good connectivity. Connectivity is getting much better now. 2.5 gig, 10 gig. You'll be able to get those files in minutes rather than waiting for everyone to download them all at once.
Makes sense.
You talked about a media server as well. So we're going to look at some of the software that we can use today, and we can create a media server like Plex or Jellyfin, and that will allow us to host our files from the NAS to any device on the network.
So what about outside of the network then? Say if you're running around the country, you're working in a cafe, editing your Gamertech videos.
Yep.
Can you access it from outside?
Yeah, you can. You'd have to do a little bit of extra technical work for that. You'd have to set up what's called a VPN, which is a virtual private network. You've probably used one at work.
Yeah, like Nord or something, or we have one for our own company.
Kind of. So what you need to do is you need to set up your router to essentially host its own VPN. So what I can do then is I can then use a VPN client software, or actually just use a browser to browse to the wide area network IP address, and then I believe it's called tunneling. You tunnel into your LAN through your router. It's a bit more complex, and it's more of a intermediate to advanced thing to be able to do that. But that is something we're going to be doing later in a further video, which I'm very excited about. I've just purchased some hardware for our router, and it's going to sit inside our server rack, along with this, which is our NAS, as you can see here. And then we will be installing probably a piece of software called pfSense, which is enterprise grade router software, which will allow you to create your own VPN on there so you can access externally.
So are you actually creating your own router then for use in the company, or is it like just a module that you put into the rack? So
I did look at doing it proper homebrew style. So I have a small Lenovo Tiny machine, which I really wanted to be able to use, mostly because I already own it, so it wouldn't have constituted any extra cost. And I wanted to be able to use that very small machine, which is, tiny footprint, really, it's literally the size of a book.
Unobtrusive.
So it will just sit in the corner, but also very, very low power because it's a router. Your router.
So are these things NASes available?
NASi
for personal consumption, for personal use? I mean, you said this is an enterprise grade bit of kit.
This one in particular is what you would consider enterprise-ish level. Yes, I would say this is kind of hybrid enterprise.
Okay.
Because it's got some components in it which are definitely enterprise level. It's got some components which are not. So I will go over the components in a moment. But you can build a NAS out of anything, right? You can build. All you need is a computer with some storage, whether that be slow hard drives, spinning rust,
spinning disks, yeah,
or fast SSDs, and a network connection. So pretty much any computer has that, right? So if you have an old PC that you, let's say you buy a new PC from gamertech.org, and your old PC, which by the way, gamertech.org will have a service where we will be able to trade in your old PC. We won't be doing that straight off the bat, but that's going to be coming very soon. If you decide then you want to take your 10-year-old PC that you've had knocking around, it's just like really underpowered, it doesn't do much anymore.
I mean, mine's in the garage.
Well, so. Okay, there we go. So you'll be able to repurpose that as a NAS. Just put some storage in it. It's really simple. You really want to use some different software rather than Windows, but we'll go through that later. In terms of what Gamertech offer, if anyone wants to have a look at what options we have available right now, you'll be able to find those on nastech.pro. So that's NASTECH.pro, nastech.pro, where we've got a super simple website set up by yours truly that took about 5 hours, but looks like it took about 5 minutes. But you can, it's a fully working website. You can configure your NAS on there, and you can buy those with a Gamertech warranty, and I'll build those on stream, and you'll be able to, I'll be able to deliver them to you in the same way that I would with a gaming PC if you were buying from gamertech.org, when that comes soon in about 1 month.
Right. You know, a good friend of mine said to me quite recently, and he's into his startups, he said, the thing about startups is you just got to start. And it might look like it was built in 5 minutes, but if it works, it works.
It does work, yes. If anyone that's watching wants to just have a little look at nastech.pro, you'll be able to see that it does work. And I think there's some good options on there. So you'll be able to buy, so we've got 2 different chassis, one with a 4 bay, so you'll be able to put 4 drives in there, and these are typically you would use 3.5 inch spinning rust HDDs because they have massive capacity, right? So you can get 20 terabytes in a single disk these days.
Wow, I was just about to ask you how big one of these things could go.
Yeah, so I mean SSDs obviously are much faster, much better for high availability, but if you just want to store files, and you don't really need to worry too much about the speed in which you can transfer them on and off your NAS, then what we've got here today, although these are enterprise level SAS drives, a standard hard drive, anything from, you might buy a 2 terabytes, 6, 8, 10, 18, 20, and we've got a 4 bay option and an 8 bay option, both of which are what's called hot swappable. So,
okay, what does that mean?
Hot swappable is exactly this. So if I just show you, if you want to come just to the side here, Frank, okay. I'll just show you real quickly. And fabulous camera lady, if you can come down here. So hot swappable means that at any time, even when the server is on, you can open up your drive bay, remove your maybe faulty drive. Let's say
even when it's running.
Even when it's running, yep.
Okay.
You can, let's say this is a faulty drive, you can replace your drive. It's now working. Back in the chassis. And it will just reinitialize. Is that back in properly? Yeah, it will reinitialize and the software will do its thing. We'll go through that later, but the software will do its thing and it will reinitialize it back into the pool of available hard drive space.
Okay, so you talked about a drive failing there. So are there potentially issues with using spinning disks, or is that not a problem? No,
not really, no. I mean, spinning hard drives, spinning rust as they call them in the biz, have been a thing for, well, it's the beginning of computers, really. Yeah. I mean, you think back to when you had your first computer, it had a spinning hard drive in it.
Yeah.
They've been perfecting these things for years. They're now faster, they're quieter, they use less energy, but most importantly, they have massive capacities, 20 terabytes per drive, and that's a consumer grade drive as well. You can go and buy that from any technology retail store.
Yeah, I mean that seems crazy. I mean, I don't know how far back your computing history goes, but our first machine that we got was as a Apple Mac in 1992, and it had a 20 megabyte hard drive. So,
yes.
I mean, you're talking about 20 terabytes per drive now. I mean, this is just it's crazy how far we've come.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a lot better these days. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the mean time between failures on they're probably prosumer drives, so not consumer, not professional, but prosumer. So something like a Seagate Iron Wolf drive. The mean time between failure is, we're talking millions of hours.
Yeah,
Right.
of constant use. You mean?
Of constant use, yeah.
Wow.
So have a look on Reddit. Some very smart person has probably done the math of if you have 20 drives or if you have 4 drives or 8 drives or whatever, what the the average time between a failed drive is. But it's a long time, right? So not something you usually have to worry about. But of course, having the hot swappable functionality in a NAS is super important, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to bring down your server, your NAS. I might say server, I might say NAS.
They're interchangeable.
A server is a very wide description, whereas a NAS is a specific type of server.
Okay, all right.
If I say either one, they're kind of.
It means
I'm roughly meaning the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing, but they're roughly meaning the same thing. You don't want to take it down, right? Because you've got files on there that you might need. If you're a home user like yourself, you might have your own NAS, and if you take it offline, there's no drama, right? You don't need to worry about that, because while it's offline, you won't need to access the files. But let's say you're a family of 5, and other people want to access those files. Let's say you're a small business of 20 people. People really need to access those files. So taking them offline is going to be, a big issue there. So if you're an enterprise of 500 people, so taking your server, your NAS offline is something that you want to do as little as possible. So having a hot swappable chassis, which this is, and which the 2 chassis that we have available at NASTech.pro and are hot swappable. So you don't need to worry about that.
Okay. So what happens then if the drive that fails, or the drive that you want to take out, is the drive that has the file that's being used on? Is there something to protect that data, or something to allow somebody to continue using it?
That's a really good question. I will answer that in more detail a bit later.
Okay.
But the short answer is that the data is kind of written across all of the drives.
Okay.
But in a way that if one fails, you still have all of your data.
Right, like a backup.
Yeah, you set it up using what's called a parity drive, where let's say if you have 4 drives, one of them will be your parity drive, which means you can have one failure before you lose your data. If you had 2 failures at the same time, you would lose your data.
But that would be very unlikely.
That would be very unlikely. If you have one failure, you just take it out, like I showed you earlier, put a new one in, you wait a few hours for it to reintegrate it back into the pool, and you're sorted.
Great.
You can also set it up so that if you have more disks, for instance, let's say you had 8 disks, you might want to use 2 of them for parity or for redundancy.
Just to be doubly safe.
Exactly. You could even use 3 of them if you wanted. So there are different ways of setting it up.
Can I assume that affects the total capacity, because you're having kind of multiple copies of the files?
You're a very smart guy, Frank. Yes, it does. So if you set up 4 drives and you're using one of them as the redundant parity drive, you lose that drive as your usable storage.
Oh, I see.
So you might have 20, 40, 60, 80 terabytes, but using one for parity, you have 60 terabytes of usable storage.
Okay.
But
you just make a trade-off.
But it's a trade-off. So it's all about your own personal use case. So if your data is not valuable at all, and you don't care about losing it, you probably wouldn't use a NAS that allows you to have redundancy and protects your data, right? But if you're using, say, video files that are reasonably important, you might have one of those drives being used for redundancy, which is, pretty good redundancy.
Yeah.
If you've got 4 drives and your files are really important, you may want to put them in a mirror configuration so that you've got 2 for storage and 2 for parity. So you're doing half and half, and that means you can have 2 drives fail before then you
have a problem.
lose your data. So it is really about your use case, and the more drives you have. So our chassis, for instance, has 20 bays. So in here, you can really kind of choose any configuration that you like, you know. And again, we'll go into more detail a bit later. I feel like we're probably going to be here all night if we're still in the intro, so we should probably move on. But thank you for your questions. I really appreciate that. I want to help you learn, and also our viewers out there, all 2 of you, thank you, whoever you are, we love you.
Tell your friends.
Please remember to like and subscribe, and put some questions down in the comments if there's anything you want to know. Yes, please leave any questions you have down in the comments. Please remember to like and subscribe. That really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm that really likes what's the word? Engagement. YouTube really likes engagement. So basically any of the buttons on this video, just click them all. Just click things and move things and say things and do all of the things that you can do on this video.
Maybe not the X in the corner though.
Not the X in the top right corner. Definitely don't ever press that unless we're being really, really boring, which I hope we're not. So, thank you for your questions. Thanks. So keep them coming, by the way. Anything, just shout out. Any questions at all, just shout out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over the hardware that we're using for this build. By the way, the build is not going to take a huge amount of time. I've already pre-tested everything on my trusty test bench over there. So all of the hardware is working, but we just need to get it inside the case and then install the software, and then just test it out and make sure we're all okay, and then that's it. So probably going to be an hour and a half to build it, I'd say, and then another half an hour just to
start your watches.
Get it tested and everything. So we'll go over the components. The chassis is a Silverstone 4U rack server chassis. I can't remember the model number, but I will put the model number down in the description, the models and the parts for all of the parts that we're using in the description at the end of the video. But what we have here is a 4U chassis that it has 20 hot swappable drives. Inside, should we have a look inside? Would you put that somewhere safe for just probably about an hour and a half? You should be able to see here we have, we've got an empty bay here for our motherboard, and this here, all of this area here is what's called a backplane, or these are actually multiple backplanes, but we have a backplane for each row of drives, which I think is 4. Can you just go to the front there and check? So is it 5 across, or is it 5 down?
4 across and 5 down.
4 across and 5 down. So we've got 5 backplanes, and each one of those we will need to connect to the motherboard with a separate connection that then allows us all of our enterprise level features, like the lights working on the front to tell us that the drives are working, or that a drive is faulty, that the drive is in use. Also connects our power, our fans, and then this is our connectivity here.
So this is the way that they all talk to each other then?
Yes. So all of these backplanes, you connect each one of them direct to the motherboard, and it allows the communication between all of the data which is here and the computer which is here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is it called 4U? What does that stand for? Because you've got 4 going across. Is it to do with the number of drives?
No, it's a good question. It's not that, but that is a good that's a good guess. So a U is just a unit of measurement. It's about, I want to say it's about 1 3/4 inches.
Okay.
What's that in modern? Jem, what's that in modern?
What's that?
It was 1 3/4 inches in modern.
Oh, probably like 4 centimetres or something. Do you want to check?
4 centimetres? Yeah. No, it'd be a bit more. Wouldn't it be a bit more than that?
I'm guessing.
Okay. Anyway, Gem's going to get that important data for us. Gem's our camera lady, and Gem, can I point this at you for a second?
If you wish.
Do you wish?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So here's Gem, our wonderful camera lady. Thank you for your hard work.
4.4 centimetres.
4.4.
Pretty close.
Thank you.
I think I did pretty well there.
There, that's a pretty good guess. 4.4. So a unit of a U is just a unit of measurement. I think it's about 4.4 centimeters or 1 3/4 inch, and it just designates the size of the chassis in height
I see.
that fits into a rack.
I see.
I'm not going to point my camera down where the rack is because it's super messy down there, and everything is just kind of set up as testing and not actually ready to go yet. It looks really bad, but essentially it's the height of the system. So a typical server that's used just for compute that wouldn't have all of these drives in, and all that would have is just the motherboard and the processors. That would be 1U, and that's about that thick, right?
All right, and then maybe like in a larger office environment, you'd have these going into a big rack.
So typically, it all depends on the use case, right? So because the use case for this is storage, being a NAS, you need to have 4 U's. I think they do 5 U's as well. I think 5 U's is the most for a chassis.
Sure.
That allows you to put lots of drives in there, right? If it was just 1 U, you'd literally be able to fit whatever the width is, 1, 2, 3, 4 drives, probably just 4 drives, right?
Sure.
In fact, not even that, because there'll be lots of other stuff going on around here as well. So that's why I said this is kind of prosumer. Another way that you might set this up in an enterprise in your business is you would have your server rack, right, which is this thing down here.
Yeah,
Right?
I see it.
I'm not going to show you this, people. I'm sorry, because it's messy down there. But a rack allows you to store all of your server components, right? All of your server components which are rack capable. A typical setup might be you would have a 1U chassis for your compute, and then you would have a 4U chassis which is just used for all of your storage, and they would connect together using a cable that comes out the back and goes in the back of the other one. But you would have separate compute and separate storage. This being a 4U chassis just allows us to do everything in one chassis, right?
Okay.
So it fits everything. So it fits the motherboard, it fits all the storage we need, it fits some nice big fans, because the smaller your fans are, there's a little fan.
Oh, that's really diddy.
This isn't a server grade fan, but this is the kind of size that you get server grade fans, because this is what fits in a 1U rack.
I see.
Okay,
Right.
sorry, a 1U chassis. This is really small. So you put this into your server, but they'd be really thick. So they would be probably 3 times, 4 times as thick as this, and they would sound like an aircraft taking off.
Right. Okay.
So that's not really ideal for our current premises.
Yeah.
But if you were building your server and your server rack with many servers and much storage,
It would have its own
you
room,
you would do it in the server room, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't care how loud it is, because it would just be in a separate room. I care about it because I need to work here as well, and I don't want
You don't have to shout all the time.
yes, I don't want a 747 level noise 24/7. So being a 4U also then allows me to have 120mm fans, which are a lot quieter.
Oh, okay.
So these are the fans. You can see that these are quite a lot thicker than what you would get on a
they
typical...
look like sort of at least twice the thickness of your normal desktop fan. Don't they?
Yeah, but basically the thicker they are, the louder they are. So even though this is quite big in terms of compared to this, this as a server grade fan would be extremely loud. This is still going to be probably quite loud, but not like a 747.
So you can't just take your desktop fans and put them in a server and expect it to be...
You could put them in there and they would work just fine. It's just that you want airflow in your server. You want airflow. It's a middle ground. So this is going to have decent airflow. But if if your fan was twice as thick, it would have much better airflow.
Okay.
But it would also be incredibly loud. So if you wanted, it's very likely, or very possible actually, that once we plug this in and see how loud these are, and I'm guessing they're going to be quite loud, I might want to swap these out for just your standard 120, like some Noctuas or something, right? So
Sure.
that are designed to be real quiet.
Yeah.
Because if this is super loud or too loud, we might want to change that.
You might be shutting it in the airing cupboard.
Yes. So it's just a balance, right? The tech world is so large. Everything out there already exists, right? You can change anything you want. And this is the idea behind Gamertech's ethos, is that we're going to have one of the best, if not hopefully we're aiming for the best, configurator on the market, which will mean that you as a customer will be able to come to our website, build your dream PC, or in this case, your dream NAS, which you'll be able to do on our sister site of nastech.pro. And you can design it however you like. If you want small fans, you can have small fans. If you want thick fans, you can have thick fans. If you want fans that have 100 LEDs in them for your crazy rainbow puke RGB look, you can go for that as well. We will have so many options that you might not even know what to pick, but we have a number of things that will help you to be able to pick. First of all, we'll have two different views in our configurator. One view being that you'll have a carousel, a curated carousel, which will have about 10 options in for each component, so maybe 10 CPUs, 10 cases, 10 GPUs, etc. But these will be just the really popular stuff, right? The stuff that most people have. But what we'll have in the background, and if you want to click up on the expert view, you'll be able to see everything, absolutely everything.
Okay.
And we're talking probably most technology that exists that you can put into a computer. we are going to have as much as possible. So the whole range of CPUs from AMD and Intel, the whole range of GPUs from AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA. Most cases that exist, we're going to try and have as much as we can, so that you as the customer will be able to choose whatever your dream configuration is. And then for just a small cost, we'll build it for you. And I do mean small cost, right? So if you want to go and buy these components on the from the high street, probably we'll be able to get them about the same price. So, as in the same price once built. Gamertech's motto, is that the right word? Is affordable gaming. We want to put as many PCs in the hands of gamers as we possibly can. And in order to do that, we are going to make everything we do affordable for as many people as possible.
That sounds good. I mean, you talk about having a lot of options and things, but what if I'm not a technical person? What if I just want something that plays PUBG at 4K?
Well, that's really a great question. There'll be a number of ways for you to do that. Firstly, you'll just be able to go to our page of games and click on PUBG, and then you'll be able to see which PCs can run at 4K. You'll be able to look at, you'll be able to browse by resolution. You'll be able to browse by 1080, by 1440, and by 4K. And whichever one you choose, you'll be able to see all the PCs that have been pre-configured or pre-built. So pre-built meaning ready to ship. Literally, I've got one sitting in the corner right now. You can just pay me some money and you can have, right?
So I can get it by the end of the week or something?
Probably as much as 2 days delivery. Pre-configured means that we've created the config for the PC and we know it will work. So you've said PUBG at 4K, what, 100 frames?
Sure.
Yeah, you probably need to spend a bit of money for that. But if you want that, you'll be able to go through a number of different ways to pick the PC that's ideal for you. It'll be pre-configured. All you need to do is just find the one that is most to your taste, or if you can just buy that if you like the look of the ones we've built, or you can click on the configure button That will take you back into our configurator, and it will allow you to change anything. So let's say you want more RAM. We've got a machine with 32 gig, you want 64. You put more RAM in it. You don't like the case we've chosen. That's fine, pick a new one.
Okay, good.
So
A bit of customization goes a long way.
we're going to have a lot of customization. I am a massive fan of many options,
Yeah.
as many options as possible. But the key is, if you don't really know much about tech, you'll be able to use our curated view, which will allow you to just look at the really popular options. And these options, by the way, will just be the stuff that you can't go wrong with. You literally cannot go wrong with. It's all the top popular configured components.
Sounds good.
And if you need any more help, you can just click down in our live chat button to chat with one of the Gamertech team, so either me or one of the other people, or you can arrange a video conference call, one-on-one chat, and we will talk you through what it is that you want. So if you come to me and you set up a video chat, we're on Teams or Zoom or whatever, and you might say, I want a PC that runs PUBG at 4K, 120 frames per second. We'll go through some options, we'll figure out what's right for you, we'll find something that's in your budget, and then we'll build it and send it.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And yes, all of this is coming in, I would say, approximately a month. So, by the way, if you want a PC today, you can still buy a PC from us. Just get in touch. It's just that our website isn't finished yet because we're building we've got some real ambitions for our website. So get in touch through our email, so tal@gamertech.org or martin@gamertech.org, or just go to our YouTube page and put a comment and ask us to get in touch. And we can build you something right now. So anyway, shall we crack on?
It's not going to build itself.
This server, this NAS is not going to build itself. No, so let's have a look at our components. So we've got our Silverstone, I would say prosumer chassis, but you would still find this in businesses, but this is just more of a hybrid because of what I said earlier. We then have our power supply, which is a Fractal 560 watt Ion Plus 2, and it's a platinum power supply. So the reason why I went with this is we don't need a lot of power here. So 560 watts is not lots, but this is a low power solution. So the CPU is only 35 watts.
Right.
Compared to the modern day Intel 13900K, which can suck up about 350 watts. This is absolutely tiny.
Gives you plenty to play with. And is that something that you'd put in a desktop PC?
This you wouldn't typically put this model, maybe not a platinum. You wouldn't need to spend so much on a platinum. You'd probably just want a gold in your PC, I would say, unless you really want a very efficient power supply.
The name relates to the efficiency then. Platinum's most efficient.
It's a grading, so it's the power supply grading is 80 plus, and then it's silver, gold, platinum, titanium, and it's all about the efficiency. So I won't go into the details. Power supply sizing is, a bit of a fine art, unless you know what you're talking about. You really have to size your power supply for your application, right? So here we've got a super low power CPU, which is 35 watts. We've got no GPU. So we don't need to have, so GPU is where most of the power goes, right?
Pretty power hungry.
And then what we have is up to 20 drives, which they typically take about 6 to 8 watts of power per drive. So it's really none. So 560 is what we've got here. That's plenty for this build. And it's the reason I went with platinum is because a server or a NAS is going to be on 24/7. So you want as an efficient as a power supply as possible, right? So
especially with the cost of living going up.
Yes, exactly. So that's our power supply. We then have we've got 3 of these these fans, and Jem, if you want to come in on these, you can see these came with the chassis. This is the Silverstone fan that comes with this particular chassis. Now, if you look at which way is that? If you look at the width of those, these are much thicker than your typical fan. I think 25mm is your typical fan width, depth, and this, I believe, is probably almost twice that. So these are going to be quite loud. I just don't know exactly how loud, but we'll see. And these are hot swappable as well, by the way. So I'll show you the mechanism later, but they basically just plug in and they come out while the system is on.
Oh.
So you'll be able to pull the chassis out of the rack, because the chassis is going to be on rails. Pull the chassis out of the rack on its rails, and you just open up the top like we did earlier, and then this will be, you know, the fans and the drives will be hot swappable. Nothing else is hot swappable. You don't want to touch anything else when it's on. just the fans and the drives at the front. We've then got a couple of Noctua fans to go in the rear just for an exhaust. These are 80mm something, the NFR8 Redux, 1800 RPM. Those good little fans. We've then got our operating system drives. So these are just a couple of ADATA. They are, I think, just 120 gig. Yeah, 120 gig. The software that we're going to be using, there's one of two options. One will be, there's three options actually, sorry. There's TrueNAS, which has two options, TrueNAS Core and TrueNAS Scale, and then there's Unraid. Your application is going to drive which one you want. We'll go into the detail later, but your application will drive which one you want. But all three of them have very, very low size requirements for your data. So actually, for your operating system drive, you really only need about 30 gigs.
Yeah.
We've got 120 to be safe. But what we have, crucially, is two of them. And this is for redundancy. I was talking about drive redundancy earlier. We also want operating system redundancy. So if one of these drives fails, it will just fail over to the second drive.
It will just kick in.
And the second drive will just take over the duties. And you'll see no interruption in service. It's almost as if the two of them are just running in parallel, and one fails and it just ducks out, you know? And then the other one is just doing it by itself, and then you want to replace the first drive so that you've got two again. We've then got a couple of SSDs here. These are just a couple of cheap SSDs, and if you're so these are the Kingston NV2, I think. Yeah, Kingston NV2 M.2 SSD drives. They're a terabyte each. And we're going to be using these for our fast storage. So we're going to have two storage pools. One is for fast, which will be SSD only, which will allow us really super fast transmission of files to and from the NAS. And then we're going to have these big old spinning rust disks will be for the slow storage.
So things that you won't need to access again in a hurry.
Things that so for me, video editing, I want to be able to. So firstly, I want to be able to edit on my main rig directly from the NAS over the network. So for that, I need to have fast storage where my current files, the videos that I'm using currently for my current project are on. I'll also need a fast network connection. I've got 10 gigabit rather, which will give me speeds of about a gigabyte a second.
Okay.
So that's about 10 times faster than your typical network speed of 1 gigabit. So that allows me to be able to do my video editing with the files not locally stored on my computer. They'll be on the NAS.
Okay,
and of course,
so it should be just as fast as if they were on your own.
Just as fast. I shouldn't notice any difference. But of course, I've got the redundancy and the protections of the NAS and the software that run it, meaning that while I'm editing those files, if one of these disks dies, the other one has all the data on it still.
So you have redundancy for everything.
Redundancy for everything. At the moment, apart from the power supply, I'm going to get a proper server grade power supply so that we have redundancy there as well. But you think about the alternative. Let's say you're on your PC, your editing PC, and you've got your single fast SSD on there, your M.2 SSD, and that's what you use to store your video files on that you're editing. Let's say you're in the middle of a project, you're editing away, and your drive fails. That's your data just gone, literally gone.
Yeah.
So if you've then spent 3 hours recording a video, and you're then in the middle of editing it, and that drive fails, you've lost all of that video that you've spent hours recording.
Time is money.
Time is money, exactly. And that's what, that's one of the many use cases of a NAS. If I'm editing from my NAS, all of the features that are in here that give me the redundancy means I'm not going to lose any files. So
It's all about security.
exactly, absolutely. So we've then got some RAM. Now, we've got some old RAM here. These are just G.Skill. This is consumer grade RAM, 2 times 16 gigs, just old DDR4 RAM, consumer grade. This is not ECC, so I would always recommend using ECC in your build. We don't have any ECC memory yet because it's on order, and I'm waiting for 2 lots of 64 gig sticks to go into our NAS, so we have 128 gigs of glorious memory to use in our NAS.
Wow.
I'll go into this later again, but on your NAS, more memory equals more performance because the memory is used as a cache, right? So what it does is it caches the files that you store, that you move in and out of the NAS in the memory, and then basically uses that as a cache so that you can swap files really quickly, move files in and out really quickly, and then when you're done moving it in or moving it out, it just then puts it into the slow storage.
When the dust settles,
Exactly.
files it away.
So I would always recommend using ECC, and then we've got our CPU cooler, and because it's a 35 watt, some of you might recognize this as the oh, thank you, Rich, for confirming that everything has been clear and audible. Very kind, sir. This is just the standard Wraith cooler that comes with most of the low to medium power AMD processors. Because we're using a 35 watt processor, we don't need any fancy cooling. This is plenty. I might upgrade that later if it's necessary to just a decent-ish tower cooler for maybe 30 or 40 pounds. What we would typically put into a low to mid-range Gamertech PC. But it's really not necessary.
I mean, this is what you were saying, isn't it? I mean, you can build this at home. You can use components from different sources. And what about that card in the end?
Well, I almost forgot that. Not really. This is the most important part.
Right.
So this little thing, this is called a host bus adapter.
Oh, okay.
So
This is the communications hub.
you can just think of this as the card that all of the hard drives plug into, so that they can communicate with the rest of the system.
Oh, very good.
Don't drop that; it's quite expensive.
Speaking of plugging it into the
Oh
computer.
yes, that is actually something I did forget. So thank you for that.
Out of mind.
So this is our motherboard. So this is the ASRock rack server or workstation motherboard. It has a model number. It is the X570D4U 2L2T.
That's easy to remember.
BMC TW.
Okay. Cool.
You got that?
Perfectly.
There's a test at the end. So this is, I would say this is again, it's a kind of prosumer solution. So it's not like you wouldn't necessarily see this in a huge enterprise, like a blue chip enterprise for their servers, but you would almost certainly see it in small businesses and maybe medium-sized businesses, and any kind of enthusiast like myself, yourself, that would just play around with this kind of stuff at home because it's really super interesting.
Someone at home who's a bit of a min-maxer, perhaps.
Yes, someone like yourself. So let's just have a little look at this. And I'll just take this out,
Oh,
give you a quick look. Thank you. And we'll just show that there. Obviously, we'll show you this as we go. But yeah, no fancy frills on enterprise level or business components. It's just ugly green rather than black with graphics and lights and everything on it as well. But it does what we need it to do. So it's an X570 motherboard, as I said. So that allows us to use any of the Ryzen chips, such as this, which is the 4350G Pro, I think.
So it doesn't have to be high performance for this use
This
case.
is not high performance. It does have 6 cores, 12 threads. It's a professional grade. It's one of the Pro chips, so it does allow for ECC memory, which is why I went for this. The motherboard allows for ECC memory as well. So we've got our CPU in place. I'm not going to unsocket that and socket it. I've put it in there to test, and it works fine. We'll put the cooler on, and then we'll be ready to go.
All right.
So I think that's the intro over. So let's get to building, shall we? Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll just turn it on to post, make sure everything works, and then we'll call that a day.